Hello and welcome back. It is November wrap-up time because somehow we are like 3 days into December already. I'm not quite sure how that's happened, but that's kind of the story of this whole year, I think. So November was a bit of a weird month for me generally, but that kind of got reflected in reading as well. So I read 8 books in November, which I think is a good amount, and actually if you look in the context of the start of the year, the end of last year, I was setting my goals and I set my target as 100 books, which is 8.5 books a month. It is a lot lower than I have been reading, so I would say a normal month for me is like somewhere between 10 and 14 books. I read one book that took me a bit longer. Like I say, I had some different things going on outside of reading, which meant I wasn't always prioritizing it. Interestingly as well, this was the first month this year that I did not read any audiobooks. So if we look at my Storygraph stats, I have been kind of reading 1 or 2 audiobooks a month, probably for like the last 6 months plus. And yeah, my brain just didn't want to do that. I did start one halfway through the month that I'm still kind of slowly working my way through. So if we get to the ones that I did read, first up right at the start of the month, we had Storm of Fury by Beck McMaster. So this is in the Legends of the Storm series, I believe it's called, which has got dragon shifters. It's got a lot of political kind of elements to it, and kind of the world has been changing throughout the book. So each book in the series follows a different couple, but they are ones that make a lot more sense if you read them in order because everything has knock-on effects for the world. So this one was quite interesting because they were all setting off to find a character that's been mentioned throughout the series in there. So the male main character has been in earlier books in the series as like the friend of someone there, and he's actually human. And then the female main character joins them in their quest, but you know, as soon as she appears, as soon as you get her point of view, that she's actually kind of working against them. So she wants to find the guy that they're looking for as well, but not for the same purposes that they do. This is the first one that there's been in this series where neither of the main characters are actually dragons. So that was kind of interesting, and there were definitely some world things that set up for later books. So that was kind of cool as well. Really, really enjoyed this one, loving this series, and can't wait to read the next one. Then I read The Oleander Sword by Tasha Suri, and this is the one that did take me quite a long time to read. So I borrowed this one from the library. This is the second book in the Burning Kingdoms trilogy, and it is a fantasy trilogy with some sapphic romance elements in it, but very much fantasy in its genre. It is Hindu inspired in its world building and world mythology. You know, obviously you get a lot of things that are like Norse inspired or Greek inspired or things like that. So yeah, that's been kind of cool. It's obviously kind of hard to say a lot about what happens without massively spoiling the first book in the trilogy, but I am completely hooked on it. The 2 main characters are incredible. Like, they are just really strong people, and they are going to do what's right, you know, what is right for them, for the people that they represent. And I really, really love that. I think it was a great example of like what the second book in the trilogy should be. It continued some threads from book 1. It set up a lot of plots for book 3, but it very definitely had its own plot in its own right. You know, you could say these are the events that happened in this book, which I think is always a good sign in a trilogy, because sometimes the second book can get a bit lost as like an intermediate thing that's only setting up book 3. So yeah, very much looking forward to reading the third book and finishing that trilogy. And then in a change of tone, I read Her Pretty Night by Mariah Ray Birch. This was a review copy that I got from Book Sirens, and this one is a sapphic fantasy romance. So the setup for this one was quite good fun. So one of our main characters is a witch, and witches are outlawed. So anyone with magical abilities, like at best, is imprisoned. And she is asked for a favour by her princess, who doesn't get on with her. And the favour is basically to impersonate the princess, who is betrothed to be married to a prince from a different kingdom, and she doesn't want anything to do with him. So our heroine doesn't really have much choice, because her life and her sister's lives are on the line. So she goes off to impersonate this princess and go and live out her betrothal to this prince, which, you know, is obviously a risky scenario in its own right. Unfortunately for her though, while she's not interested in the prince, so that doesn't cause a problem for her at all, she is very interested in the knight that is assigned as her private guard, and they have a friendship with feelings that are developing, and obviously very, very forbidden, because she is engaged to someone else, but she is also lying to the knight about who she is. Yeah, I really, really enjoyed this. So it was a definite change of pace for me after reading kind of like a really in-depth, detailed fantasy to move to this. But I very much enjoyed it. It was just such a fun concept, and like I loved the way the different characters were and the way it all developed, and you're just never quite sure where certain things are going to go. And then we have got one of only 2 books from my shelves that I read in November, and that is The Darkest Kiss by Kerry Arthur. So this is book 6 in the Riley Jensen Guardian series. Obviously, being book 6, I can't say a massive amount about what happens in it without major spoilers for the earlier books. But in this series, we have got Riley, the main character, is half vampire, half werewolf. She very reluctantly works with the Guardians, who are the people that are in charge of keeping the law with paranormal activity. So if there are rogue vampires or werewolves or any other paranormal creatures, they're the ones that go in to look at what's happening and neutralise the threat. This one had, it had some really interesting arcs in terms of her as a person and kind of her professional development as well. I really enjoyed it. I'd had a little break since I had read book 4, and I was a bit nervous kind of going back in, but I sank straight back into the world. Really, really loved it. And yeah, this series has just been such a good thing for me to pick up this year. It's really clicked and it's been exactly what I have needed. And then I read another review copy. So this was Shadows Dark and Deadly by Andrea Marie Johnson. So this one was the first book in the series, and it's like a steampunk urban fantasy type setting. In this, the main character that we're following, we start with her homeless and living on the streets. She's just trying to survive the winter. She has some magic powers that she is using to get by and make life easier for her. And as she is using some of those powers to protect herself, she comes across a man who is very deadly, very powerful, and says that he wants to train her. So it turns out that he is involved with the assassins. He has seen her powers, and yeah, he wants to train her up to use them and for her to be his apprentice. So add into this that they had actually met a few years before in a one-night situation. So there's like an interesting kind of dynamic in there. and we're kind of like following her training as well as kind of a mystery of something that is going wrong in the town. I kind of struggled to get into this one at first because it is written in present tense, and I think the writing style took me a little while to hook into. But then I got really, really interested when she first started kind of finding out more about what she could potentially do with her powers and kind of where things were going, and this whole world of like the assassins and everything got introduced. It for me was a bit long for what it was. So this is the first book in a series, and it is very much one where you finish book one and you don't feel like you've had as much resolve as would like seem right for the book. It kind of feels like you've had a part one rather than a book one. But yeah, I have no regrets about reading it, and like I say, I think some of the premise was really interesting, and I did kind of get quite into it, but it's not one that I'm going to continue with the series, unfortunately. Then I read the other book from my shelves that I read, which, surprise, surprise, was Deadly Desire by Kerry Arthur. Yeah, went back for more. So yeah, this one's book 7. There's 9 books in the series, so everything is starting to ramp up, and there were some major developments in like every aspect of the world in there. Some like huge things going on for Riley personally, the professional situations, like the multiple cases that she's having to take on, everyone around her. It was really good. I loved it. Like I say, this urban fantasy series is doing exactly what I need. Yeah, the characters that appeared in this one and everything, it was just, there was a lot. I was definitely like full range of emotions reading this one. Very much, I mean, you can tell I'm gushing about these generally. But yeah, I have actually, this is like, obviously, I'm doing my November wrap up, but I have actually just finished book 8 as well. So I think I am actually going to finish this series this year, which when you consider I started it this year and how long it normally takes me to read a series, tells you everything that you need to know about how much I love them. So then, possibly a bit dismayed about the fact that I had 3 days left in the month and I had only read 6 books, I hit a couple of novellas to end the month. So I read Wrapped Up in You by Talia Hibbert. This is one that I had forgotten about, but when I was filming my Kobo Plus video, I found it in there and talked about it. And I did say in that video, oh, I might read this one tonight. Well, I did. This one is a childhood friends to lovers, and he is now a celebrity. So basically the male main character has been away in the States, becoming this big major film star, but is coming back for the family Christmas as he always does. But he always spends Christmas with our female main character's family. So she lives in England, but they go to Scotland for Christmas to see her grandma. And yeah, the two families were friends from a really young age, but there have been some feelings lying around as well. It's just that this is the first time that both of them have been available for anything to potentially happen. I really, this hit the spot so much. I was grinning like anything reading it. The heroine in this one does have anxiety, and it was honestly handled so well. Like the topic of mental health and the topic of like trauma from some of the things that she has been through was just all handled so well. And oh my gosh, the hero was just the sweetest guy. Like, he just understood her so completely, and it was just lush. It was basically everything you want in a cozy Christmas novella. So yeah, highly recommend, and it has reminded me how much I love Talia Hibbert's writing, and so I'm now going through trying to find some of her other books to read, because I've only read like a couple of her series so far. And then the final book that I read in the month was actually even shorter, and was another one that I had found when I was going through the Kobo Plus books that I had downloaded, and this is Being Hospitable by Mika James. This one is a sibling's best friend romance. It is very fast burn because I guess these people, they've known each other for a very long time. So we've got one of our main characters who, you know, has got to self-settle with her career. So she owns her own place, and her best friend, he needs somewhere for his little sister to stay while she is doing an internship for a few months. And so the little sister comes to stay, only of course the little sister isn't quite so little anymore, much as her big brother doesn't want to admit this. And she has very, very much got her eye on her brother's best friend and thinks that the two of them could be very good together. And she presses the point really, really early, like she knows what she wants. And yeah, it was really good fun. It was, like I say, really fast burn. It's straight to it, no nonsense, no drama, nothing. It was just great. It was just one of those, you know, pick up, read it, enjoy it, and I loved it. It was a great way to end my reading month. And like, I'm definitely going to be reading more books by the author soon. This was the first book of hers that I had read. So there you go, that was the 8 books that I read in November. So yeah, less than usual, but also quite a few books that I absolutely loved. So I can't complain at all. Let me know how your reading month was. I would love to know if you read anything that has got you really excited, or if you are thinking of reading anything that I read in the month. And I will see you soon. Bye.